I suggest you a walk in the world of the science fiction in order to study together some striking female characters in the light of the context of the time. So I mentioned it as reflecting the evolution of women's rights in fiction. And I'm sure you will easily find the link of my subject with the previous presentations. In fact, Sophie Adenau explained us that there are still few female astronauts. We have to think about what this fact reveals of our society. We are all familiar with many novels, movies, television series about space exploration. In most cases, the heroes of these stories were men, but little by little, all along the last century, women appeared in these productions, and their character have in fact integrated the codes and representations in vogue during the history of the 20th century. Here are a few examples, which are not exhaustive. I choose to develop this theme. For each period considered, you will see an insert in the slide listing the right acquired by women during the decade, corresponding to the character developed, which help you to better make the link between history and fiction. First, I want to speak about Fried Welten in Frau im Mond in 1929. It was a character of a modern and emancipated woman under the Weimar Republic. She reflects the emergence of new opportunities for women in the 1920s, particularly in science and technology. In the film, Frida yearns for adventure and space exploration, so she can be seen as a metaphor for crossing traditional boundaries. However, although Frida was a progressive figure, she didn't completely escape the codes of her time. Her role in the love triangle with Hans and Wolf shows how films on the time continued to insert women into romantic relationships as a central element of their identity. But her role in the mission illustrates the growing importance of the recognition of women's professional abilities. Fried embodies the tension and aspiration of the modern woman in the 1920s. It symbolizes an important advance in the representation of women in cinema, aligned with the social changes of the Weimar Republic while remaining partially locked into conventions of its times. Her figure as an engineer and pioneer underlines the opening of new horizons for women. So let's have a jump in time to join the 50s with an implicit critique of male control. The character of Altaira in Forbidden Planet is a fascinating reflection of perceptions and expectations of women in American society in the 50s. She is the real model of the ingenious and sexualized young woman. She also represents the figure of the woman who has to be protected and of the strength of the paternal role. She shows a certain independence of mind, a curiosity, and the capacity for reflection that can be interpreted as an anticipation of the social changes underway, even if she ultimately remains limited by the conventions of the time. Finally, the film offers a foremost implicit criticism of patriarchy through the consequences of Mobius authority. Altaira is representative of the complex transition in place of women in the 50s, marked by the wealth of patriarchal norms, but also by the first signs of liberation that would mark the following decades. Forbidden Planet echoes on its ongoing evolution, showing a female heroine who oscillates between dependence and emancipation and reflects the challenge faced by women at that time. So let's go to the 60s. Could I talk about TV series without mentioning Nyota Uhura in Star Trek? She was a really revolutionary character. She's emblematic of the evolution of the place of African American women in the 60s society. Through Uhura, the series addresses several aspects of this social transformation. The fact that Uhura is a communication officer aboard the Enterprise, an intergalactic exploration ship, is a radical and progressive representation when racial segregation in the United States was still a reality. Uhura was a model for young women and minorities, and Michelle Nichols was encouraged by Martin Luther King when she was considering leaving the show. Uhura is a part of a multinational and multiracial crew, emphasizing that women, regardless of their background, can play a leading role in the future. Uhura and Captain Kirk exchanged the first interracial kiss on American TV, and that helped to break cultural taboos in the American society of the 60s. When Uhura embodies the gradual evolution of women and minority rights in the late 60s. She's the image of the competent and respected Black woman in a world where gender and skin color do not define the limits of her abilities. Her character thus helped to change the perception of that women, and especially minority women, could achieve in society, marking an important step toward greater inclusion in the media and the society at large. So let's go for the 70s. In the social context of 1975, as feminist movements gained strength and visibility, Helena Russell in Space 1999 has a respected and non-stereotypical professional role when the image of the housewife is beginning to be questioned. Helena embodies this figure of the competent and respected doctor, enhancing an image of the woman that breaks with traditional cliché. She is not relegated to a support or assistance role. She makes decisions, makes her voice heard, and positions herself as an equal to her male colleague. She embodies an image of the modern woman of the 70s who is strong and independent without being devoid of sensitivity. The fact that she was a high-level scientist, that she was taken seriously, and that she was not reduced to a simple function of companion or support for the male character is a reflection of the feminism of the time, asking for recognition of women's skills and autonomy. We have to notice that in this TV show, no woman was integrated in the pilot teams who were considered in the series as the only character named as astronaut. Helena Russell was a significant figure in the television landscape of 1975 because she embodied a model of professional, competent woman who was an equal to men, an image that was gaining importance in society at the time. This character contributed a lot to changing the representation of women on screen in the line with the advances of feminism and changes in mentalities. So let's go to the 80s. In this period marked by the advance of feminist movements, Hélène Ripley in Alien, and Aliens occupies a position of responsibility and competence without her gender defining this function. She has a leadership role in a male world as she's integrated into a group of predominantly male characters. As you can see on the second image, there was only one woman in a great team with Ripley. Ripley becomes a woman of action in her own right, breaking the stereotype of the damsel in distress. Her role is centered on the survival and not on sexualization, despite her light outfit during the final fight. Ripley is defined above all in her intellectual qualities and her courage and resilience with the face of adversity, just as women in this period resisted restrictive social and professional norms. Ripley's success with the audience marked the emergence of a desire for authentic female representation in strong roles. Her popularity echoes the changing society, as if it was ready to welcome strong women into central roles. The character of Ripley in Alien represents this pivotal moment for representation of women in popular culture. Her independence, competence, lack of sexualization, and strength echo the advance of women's rights in society in the 80s. By embodying a model of resilience and autonomy, Ripley symbolized the changing mindset regarding the place of women in the public and private spheres, paving the way for complex female character in future works of fiction. So let's go to the 90s and late beginning of the 21st century. We have now a woman in a position of legitimate and undisputed power. As a captain of the US Voyager, in Star Trek Voyager, Janeway leads the crew without being questioned because of her gender. She's a woman in a position of legitimate and undisputed power. She's respected for her intelligence, tactical skill, and leadership ability, qualities that, until then, were often attributed to male characters. Janeway represents a modernized version of female leadership. Contrary to earlier stereotypes where women in position of power had to adopt masculine traits in order to prevail, Janeway incorporates traditionally feminine qualities into her leadership style. She's a resonance with the social and professional context of the 90s, where women began to reach positions of responsibility in many fields, even if there were still inequalities. She shows that women leadership can be powerful and effective without compromising their identity. NASA even noticed that Star Trek has influenced generations of female scientists and astronauts, and that Janeway's character helped to break stereotypes. She has inspired women to pursue careers in science and technology sectors, showing that female leadership figure could be the role model in previously male fields. The character of Catherine Janeway in Star Trek Voyager is a reflection of the social advances of the 90s regarding gender equality and women professional opportunities. Janeway embodies a woman capable of leadership and profound moral decisions, breaking down barriers of representation on television and inspiring a new generation of women to reach new heights in variety of fields. So let's go for the last one I chose. Since the 2010, we have a journey of resilience and independence with Ryan Stone in Gravity. In fact, she's a striking representation of the contemporary woman. Gravity also reflects the real-life advances of women in space exploration, with pioneers such as Sally Ride and Eileen Collins. Ryan Stone symbolized the opening of these fields to women and the evolution of mentalities. She highlights a competent and brilliant woman, proving that these spaces are no longer exclusive to men. Ryan's journey alone in space after the death of his colleagues resonates with the evolution of women's representation in society. Ryan Stone is not just a victim in distress. This journey of reconstruction and resilience shows how women are capable of adapting and overcoming their own traumas. By touching on the duality of motherhood and career, Gravity shows the complexity of modern women who, despite their professional successes, can still be defined by their maternal role or by the emotional pressure of family. Ryan Stone's character is thus representative of the place of women in contemporary society, in that it embodies the value of independence, competence, resilience, and emotional complexity. As a strong, non-stereotypical female character, she shows that cinema is evolving along with society, reflecting the challenges and accomplishments of modern women in diverse and valued roles. So what can we say up in conclusion? We've come a long way since the complete absence of women in space exploration. Many other books, films, or series could have been mentioned here. It has become impossible today to consider women as companions of the hero on a work of fiction about space exploration. And in fact, the latest recruitment of the ESA, the European Space Agency, seems to be a positive development that the results of the integration in the minds of the ability of women to embody a heroine of space. So, in fact, in the past, astronauts were symbolized by these men, and today we have 50% of women in the last selection of the European Space Agency. Thanks a lot for listening to me. I'm going to stop the share of the screen. Up.
Thank you, Hélène. Are there any questions? For the online participants, you can just unmute yourself and ask the questions directly.
Okay, thank you very much, Hélène, for this very interesting presentation. I was impressed by the results you show, and I was wondering, you told in the conclusion that you could have quoted a lot of other movies or books, but could you have quoted other movies who could have shown the contrary to the thing that you show? I mean, could you have shown movies which show that women are facing a decrease in their rights or a decrease in their participation in movies? Because I think that we have only one character for each period. So would it be different if we had 3, 5, or 10 characters in each period?
No, in fact, if I had took other examples, I'm sure we will find the same characteristic. You can imagine even Star Wars with Princess Leia. You can imagine I'm searching the name of the series. You can imagine the what was the name? In the literature of the you can imagine also Valerian and Laureline. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of examples like that. That in fact, you will see the same thing in which each period. All the films, TV, books follows the evolution of the rights of the woman.
So it's always the same evolution.
Yes, yes. I've chosen these examples because these are ones I like a lot, but I could have chosen others, and you would see the same thing. Perhaps in the 50s you have something like a few films in where the women were only the assistant of the scientist, but that not a lot, not a lot.
Okay, and it is very interesting that you quote also Valérian and Laureline because it's a comics, it's not a movie. But
yes,
we have I think about 20 to 25 comics from Valérian and Laureline, and you think that Laureline is going the same way than the movies that you have seen, but at the beginning she was only an assistant to Valérian, and then that comics after comics she is more and more
yes,
equal to Valérian, and in the end almost superior to Valérian.
I'm happy to hear you saying that.
It's a question.
In fact, that's a reality. At the beginning of the series, she was not a secondary character, but almost a support to Valérian. And when you go on the series, you can see she get more and more important. And that's not so perceptive in the film. That in the BD series, yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there are other questions. Martin.
Okay, thank you so much for your interesting presentation. Well, I was watching this as a way of how this movies or popular culture in a more general term influence reality. I mean, through the popular culture visions and visualizations and movies and comics and something like this, probably it was like influencing reality. But I think that now in reality, we are in the moment that, as you showed in the last slide, like the ESA class of 2022 is like half women, half men. So it's not the case anymore. Like it's natural that there are women, and still in popular culture, I would say it's still like talking about heroines. Like it's still like it's wow, there is a woman, for example, in charge of the team of astronauts or something like this. So can you provide or tell something about the examples where women in space, it's not a case anymore? Like there are women and it's like normal, it's like natural. Because I have a feeling that in popular culture, there are still like women are the main characters in films. Like for me, it's still some kind of tokenization of women, like talking about them as something, specific, that there are women. But in reality now, maybe we are just accepting, of course, we are fighting for more place for women, and through education, we were talking about this based on our research. But can you see the reflection of this, I would say, the naturalization as an opposite to tokenization? Can you see some examples in popular culture, or popular culture because of its specificity? It's like always will tell about women in space in such a way of something not expected.
I'm sure you're right. In fact, in popular culture, we see a lot of women in cinema, TV, but when you consider the last recruitment of the European Space Agency, it seems to be very inclusive with 50% of women. But when you look the reality of the constitution of the team, you can see that there are a lot more women in the reserve team than in the active team. So there are 50% of women, but in fact, the representation is not very equal with men. So I think there is a lot more work to have the the expression of the real equality between men and women, despite the progression in the pop culture, in fact.
Thank you so much, Professor, for this really fascinating talk. So, as I understood it, you've given a really convincing talk about how space science fiction and science fiction in general, right, can serve as this kind of avant-garde space for socially controversial kind of pushing the boundaries of what is socially possible, which all makes sense to me. But I wonder about the beginning of the story, if it's maybe not so linear there. And this is sort of building on the first question. So for instance, in the 1950s, when space science fiction and space exploration becomes, first very popular, it's seen as very socially conservative for many people. And there's a big pushback from, the feminist movement and civil rights movement and whatnot in the US, because both space exploration itself is seen as pushing into a more kind of socially conservative space, and also this sort of space science fiction and culture or whatever. So, for instance, NASA kind of debates, oh, should we do women astronauts? The Soviets are doing it, and they decide no, and they won't. And that happens for decades before they change their mind about that. Right. In the Soviet Union, too, they have 2 women astronauts. It's, of course, very significant. And then they stop doing it. And there's a pretty extreme sexist rhetoric about those women astronauts. The second one they talk about, they picked her because she was so beautiful, this kind of rhetoric, right? Anyways, and a lot of the science fiction, too, it's about this sort of utopia. You see all this sort of utopian space technology is going to revolutionize our kitchens, and we're going to have these robots that will do everything for us and blah, blah, blah. And yet women will remain in the kitchen, right? And it's a quite socially conservative, reinforcing these gender roles. And that does change. I think starting in the 60s, you see a real acceleration of the story you're talking about. But at first, space doesn't seem like that. It seems to me like it began as a sort of more social conservative thing, compared to, say, the literature in the 1940s in the US, which had a much larger role for women as agents, in part because of World War II. And there was this, very sudden shifts in perceptions of what a woman could do, and this push into a more sort of social conservative moment in the 1950s. So what do you think about that?
I'm sure you're right, but I'm sure the results of the previous studies that was presented this morning are consequences of the lack of women in science fiction production, as shown as an astronaut or working for space. So I hope there will be a progression in the next years. As you can see, the following programs of Artemis and other ones today are promoting women in reality, in the real world, in fact.